Good morning, everyone. We're going to get this started. First of all, we'd like to welcome everyone who took the time to come out today to celebrate a very innovative model in which we're excited to present today. You're going to hear some very interesting perspective and information. I want to make sure that I extend gratitude to Councilman de León, Assemblyman Santiago, and our investor, Matt Barron. So thank you for taking your time. Welcome. And again, welcome to everyone that's here today. Just a brief background. Some of the things that we were working on a few years ago up until today is how do we create housing with velocity and innovation? And you're going to hear that today because in observable fact and where you're standing in today is the indicator and the evidence that private-public partnerships do come together, do execute, and do provide solutions. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Councilman de León. Thank you again, and very excited to hear and share this information.
Thank you so very much, Lee. Good morning to each and every one of you. It's indeed an honor to be here, and I know that without a doubt, anyone and everyone who made it here this morning here on Main Street can bear witness to the tragedy that is homelessness on the city streets of Los Angeles, because it impacts every community. But that tragedy is more prevalent here in downtown Los Angeles and adjacent Skid Row, in my district, in Council District number 14, more than any other district in the great city of Los Angeles. That's because if Los Angeles is in fact the nation's epicenter for homelessness, then District number 14, where we're standing here today, is in fact ground zero. We have more unhoused individuals in City 14 than anywhere else in the great city of Los Angeles. In fact, I want to take this and scale it up so you can understand the magnitude of this humanitarian crisis. We have more unhoused individuals in City 14 than every metropolitan city in America, except for 3 cities: New York, Los Angeles in the aggregate, and Chicago. So City 14 has more unhoused individuals than the cities of Houston and Phoenix, the 4th and 5th largest cities in America. So when we think about Pittsburgh or Cleveland or Detroit or Baltimore or Miami or Washington, D.C., they have nothing over City 14. And that, in fact, is quite tragic. So it gives you the scale of the magnitude of the crisis that we're dealing with today. And nowhere, and I mean nowhere, do we have the largest concentration of unhoused individuals than right here in Skid Row. You could not have missed it coming in here this morning. I can tell you one thing. As elected officials, we do have power. We have power to help incentivize housing. We have the power to build the housing. We have the power to acquire assets, real estate assets, and make those real estate assets available to our unhoused, the most vulnerable, the most marginalized in our society. Those living on our streets, our sidewalks, as well as alleyways. Now, when we deal with the complexities of homelessness, whether it's severe mental illness, schizophrenia, bipolarness, whether it's severe drug addictions, and we have the drug enforcement agencies, DEA, FBI, ATF, U.S. Marshals, Customs and Border Protection, LAPD, LA Sheriff, every law enforcement agency imaginable. They have proven over quite a number of years that they're quite ineffective, in fact, curtailing the flow of illicit drugs into the United States that impacts our Angelenos every day and Americans throughout the country. But we have the power to secure the housing. That's why I also want to give a very special thank you to Simon Barron Development for taking the bold action that's needed right here in Skid Row by investing. Matthew, I want to thank you very much. I want to thank you very much for your vision to make this happen. To make this happen in a city that needs affordability and needs it more than ever before. The fact that we have more than 71,000 luxury market rate vacancies, while at the same time we have 41,000 people living on our streets. What you have done, Matthew, is a godsend for 400 individuals or 600 individuals who right now are currently living on our streets. You offer a renewed future for the Cecil Hotel as we near its centennial celebration come 2024 in just 2 years. want to give a very special thank you to Lee, right, as well, Lee Raggets as well. So. The Skid Row Housing Trust has done remarkable work, as we know. I've gone to several of the properties, and they are exceptional properties. First time I came when we did the press conference, when I announced we were going to do No Place Like Home, $2 billion bond measure for the state of California. I did it at a Skid Row Housing Trust development in Skid Row. And you do exceptional work. And I want to thank you as well as your staff, for everything that you do. And to the staff of Skid Row Housing Trust over here today, thank you for your hard work. Thank you for the work that's often done behind the scenes, without the limelight, without the celebration from the press or from the public. I thank you for what you do for us, for Angelenos, every single day. As you know, 41,000 people are experiencing homelessness. And we're going to open up 600 slots. And my understanding, through Assemblyman Miguel Santiago, that the price point per unit was roughly $140,000. $125,000. In fact, I added $15,000. $125,000. Now, when you contrast that with the average price point of $550,000 on HHH, this is a proven fact that you can do more with less, given the magnitude of the crisis on our streets. That's why we have to be stewards of the purse strings of the citizens of the city of LA, because there's going to be a time when that spigot is cut off altogether. And when that spigot is come off altogether and the politicians in Washington, D.C. or Sacramento don't continue more funding for what is America's problem, then we're going to have even a bigger crisis right now. So I want to thank you, Matthew, for the hard work by actually reducing the price point and actually proving that we can do this at $125,000 per unit, which is very, very critical. Lastly, I want to say this. Over the last week, my team, led by Matthew, and my downtown LA team has been focused on El Pueblo, Placito Olvera, Olvera Street to many folks, the birthplace of the great city of Los Angeles. We're in the process of engaging with every unhoused individual who's living on those streets today. To date, we have housed 62 individuals, or I should say 69 individuals. 2 of them we put on a Greyhound bus to Nashville, Tennessee, where they're from originally, because they wanted to go back home and be reunited with their family. So we did that. We stopped by, bought a bag of groceries and snacks, as well as plenty of refreshments so they can be well kept when they go back all the way to Nashville, Tennessee. But I want to give this some context, because we're doing this right now. By the end of this week, irrespective of the rain, we should have everyone off the streets in Placito Olvera. I want to put this in context, because some folks believe it is the process of quote-unquote criminalization. What's criminal is you have individuals who are dying on our streets every day. What's criminal is when you juxtapose accessibility, whether it be the Cecil Hotel or the LA Grand Hotel or a tiny home, which we understand is short-term interim housing until we can get the permanent housing for them. What is criminal is that they're left to live on the streets every single day. And we moved very quickly in Highland Park and Arroyo Seco, where we built out the largest tiny home village in the United States of America, 227 beds, and we did so in 3 months. We already broke ground in Eagle Rock, and we will have 100 new beds there as well. We purchased 2 motels, and we closed escrow last year, December 28th. We're on Huntington Drive in El Sereno. For years, you had a huge homeless encampment. And now, every single one individual who is living on that Huntington Drive medium has a comfortable bed, clean sheets and clean towels, an HVAC system, a heater, air conditioning, remote control television set so they can watch the Dodgers or the Lakers or the Clippers, a warm shower and their own bathroom, and especially a locked door, especially for women. That is so important to start the pathway to recovery for all Angelenos, regardless of who you are and where you come from. Time is over for studies. Time is over for more reports. Time is over for more blue ribbon commissions. The time now is for action. And even though today is a dark, cloudy day with a lot of rain hitting us, much needed rain that we need, During the moment of dark clouds, gray clouds, comes the beacon of hope and opportunity when the sunshine breaks through. That means, metaphorically, we're giving hope for many unhoused individuals who will start their first day to move forward. You got to have that roof over your head to deal with everything that we've been dealing with, how we ended up homeless to begin with. But you got to have a roof. Without the roof, psychotherapeutic services, dealing with job training, dealing with the issues of drug addictions, anything and all the demons that we carry inside of ourselves as human beings. It doesn't make a difference if you're elected officials, if you're developers, if you're journalists, if you're living on the streets. We all carry things inside of us every time. But to stop the hemorrhaging, you got to have a roof over your head. And that's why today is an amazing day. And that's why I thank Lee for everything that she's done for our community. That's why I thank Matthew for all the investments that they've made. They priced it out. Obviously, it still makes sense as we price it out for you. You know, that's why it's a huge 600 folks very soon are going to be off the streets and in this beautiful, majestic, hotel, which has a long history, but nonetheless, we're going to start a new chapter as we start a chapter for recovery. Now, it's my pleasure to introduce a very good friend, a young man who has been there in the struggle with me here in Skid Row, to fight the good fight, to be the sharp tip of the spear, to make sure we get the necessary funds from our state capital down to Skid Row and elsewhere throughout the great city of LA. He's our champion in the state capital of Sacramento, getting the dollars to provide the housing that's necessary. Let's give it up for our very own Assemblyman Miguel Santiago.
Plain and simple, we're here to celebrate something that works. Because let's put this in context. 600 units. From the minute the pencil hit the paper, to acquisitions, to building up, less than $125,000 each door. Something worked here. $550,000 to $750,000 a unit on other projects. Because you cannot explain that to an average voter. You cannot explain to somebody who is unhoused why it takes 3 to 5 years to do that. There's just no explanation except excuses of why it's not working. Today we're celebrating something that does work. Put this in the context. If we had 100 more of these units throughout the region, we'd solve homelessness. Plain and simple. Just 100 of these projects. 100 of these projects solves homelessness in LA County. That's the bottom line. Now, let's be very honest here. This Skid Row wasn't built in a day. It was built over generations. From when Ronald Reagan ran, blaming those who were unhoused, to the policies and containment in downtown Los Angeles, to criminalization. And here we are today, with close to 5,000 people living on Skid Row. I use rounded numbers. Close to 5,000 people living on Skid Row. There's been a lot of messed up policies that have not worked. Some well-intentioned, some understood to have negative consequences. But here we are, celebrating something that worked. Now, folks around here, folks out there, have all done their job in getting up 600 units as fast as they possibly can at a fraction of the cost. Now, we need others to step up and do their job. So the next step is LASA going out and rehousing people immediately, ASAP. Right around this neighborhood was mentioned, almost 5,000 people live on the streets. If we have the multi-purpose disciplinary teams that go out and talk to people, we can get 600 people in here ASAP if we treated it like an emergency, if we treated it like the crisis it is today. So, folks here, it's a crisis. Less than a year at a fraction of the cost. Now, everybody else needs to step up, roll up their sleeves, and get people in here because they will save lives today. And I understand you're having a meeting about that later on, to get things moving. And we'll do our part to get things moving to house people today. Plain and simple. Brevemente, para los medios de comunicación en español, and I know you were going to do that too, este es un crisis. Y han visto muchas pólizas que no han servido Y hay muchas pólizas que directamente ayudaron a crear gente a las calles. Ahora estamos celebrando algo inmediato. 600 unidades, $125,000 el costo. Poquito comparado al costo que estamos viendo de 550,000 a 750,000 por unidad. Es lo que estamos celebrando ahora aquí. Eso es una emergencia. Ahora ocupamos que las agencias locales se muevan lo más rápido posible para darle vivienda a la gente que se está muriendo afuera en la lluvia. Let's play it simple. Today it's raining. We have the luxury of being here, comfortable, and we'll get fed. But there are people, there are families who are dying on the streets today, and it will be shameful, disgraceful if we don't move at warp speed to house people here today. 600 units, we got to move quickly as possible. What do you think? Today, we got to do this today. And like Stevie Wonder once said, look, signed, sealed, delivered. Now let's do the work, get people housed.
And now for the private investment side, man of the hour, would like to introduce Matt Barron and really congratulate and thank him for facilitating this solution.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the Councilmember de León, Assemblymember Santiago. Thank you guys for your support. When we started this project years ago, never thought it'd bring us here, but I have to give credit where credit is due. Our partners at Skid Row Housing Trust, Lee, Sierra, their team, we wouldn't have been able to pull this together without them. So thank you to them for their direction and their help and support in putting this together. And look, we're really excited to be able to deliver this for the city, for the community. And I think it really goes to show that public-private partnerships can really work. There's things that we can do as private individuals that are probably a little bit more nimble and be able to save costs. And we're really excited to be able to bring 600 units online and serve the people that need it the most. So thank you very much to everyone.
I'll jump in here and ask if there's any questions, and maybe I'll pitch to the right person here. Unless you want to do this.
Questions?
Any questions?
Commentaries, diatribes?
That means we took care of everything.
Yeah. Well, I won't do the whole speech. I'll just do an abbreviated version. Bueno, antes que nada, muy buenos días. Me siento bien honrado de estar aquí con mis colegas, particularmente mi gran amigo Miguel Santiago, Lee Ragos, que encabeza Skid Row Housing Trust, y también nuestro principal inversionista aquí, Mateo, de Simon Barron Development. Aquí estamos para celebrar y también vamos a cortar el listón en unos momentos para celebrar 600 unidades, habitaciones para nuestra gente indigente. Aquellas personas que están viviendo bajo el sol, día tras día, mes tras mes, año tras año, bajo las lluvias, las cascadas de agua hoy día, en las banquetas, en los callejones, en nuestras calles. Eso es una crisis humanitaria. El alto índice es alarmante y peligroso de personas viviendo en las calles. Nos deja una mancha negra, que quede muy claro, de vergüenza, que somos la segunda ciudad más grande a lo largo y ancho de nuestro país, una de las ciudades más ricas del mundo, y más de 40,000 personas, madres, padres con hijos viviendo en las calles. Como dijo mi colega Miguel Santiago, se requiere urgencia, porque estamos todos de acuerdo con las políticas públicas, el objetivo, pero se requiere urgencia inmediatamente. One thing I should emphasize in English is that the conundrum that I think we find ourselves here, particularly in Los Angeles, is that we're all on the same page, by far and large, on understanding what this crisis is, understanding the magnitude of the crisis, but we're really not on the same page with the sense of urgency and immediacy. This is a largely democratic city and town and county and state. But, my journey has, JDs, MDs, MSWs, JDs, PhDs. I've actually had more problems with them in the process of dealing with this issue than the unhoused individuals. When I engage, when my staff engages when the unhoused individuals, 9 times out of 10, they say yes. You'll get a small fraction of folks who you have to work with a little more. Then you get another tinier fraction that says absolutely not. Whatever PTSD, whatever trauma they're dealing with, but that's a tiny fraction. That's become, I know, largely the narrative that they don't want housing. 9 times out of 10, they'll take the housing. It's the bureaucrats who delay, who obstruct, who create more red tape, and I can tell you this, it's unacceptable. So this is a man-made issue with regards to the housing components. We may not have control over the mental health issues or macroeconomic issues with deep inequities built into our economic systems that rewards the very wealthy, in some often cases, folks born on third base who act like they hit a home run, or, the drug addictions and the massive voracious appetite that we have on our side of the border, but law enforcement's inability to curtail the flow on our side. But what is within our control is a question of housing, and whatever manifestation that is, short-term, long-term, whether it's permanent supportive housing, whether it's tiny homes, whether it's room key, whether it's home key, whether it is being innovative and dealing with land costs and soft costs and reducing our costs, and it's prefabricated modular housing on city land, county land, so we can eliminate land costs, because the last thing we want to do is get in a bidding war with the private side of developers. Because if we actually win, it's going to be a very expensive piece of land. And oftentimes we find ourselves doing that. Stuff that's nonsensical from very, 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 very smart people and experienced people. That's why we have to think differently. We have to move with a sense of urgency. You know what it is like? And I'll finish it with this. It's like you go to an emergency room and your arm is almost severed completely from your whole body and you're bleeding out profusely. And then the ER doc says, by the way, you have stage 3 cancer. You need immediate treatment, whether it is radiation or chemotherapy. We got to get you in right now for treatment. You say, doctor, I'm going to die in about 15, 20 minutes if you don't sew my arm up right now, so I'm going to bleed out and hemorrhage to death. And that's why you have to move heaven and earth to get folks indoors quickly. Now, I know a lot of folks don't like congregate shelter, and I understand that completely. They don't like it, Some folks do, a lot of folks don't. But we move heaven and earth when it comes to building football stadiums. We move heaven and earth when it comes to building basketball arenas. We move heaven and earth when it comes to building luxury market rate housing, which I'm not opposed to, but we go right into the clouds with skyscrapers. But all of a sudden, the machine of progress grinds to a screeching halt when it comes to moving units online quickly for our unhoused community members, who, by the way, are people of color, and by the way, majority are African American in Skid Row. In other parts of the city, you may have differences. In Boyle Heights, Latino, El Sereno, Latino. But we need to match the rhetoric with the same urgency and the operational ability. That's the key word, the operational ability to make sure we can get these online. This was a private deal here. And this is an example of Skid Row Housing Trust and Simon Barron. Thank God the numbers worked out. And you had it in your heart and part of your values to say, hey, we can do this together, and it just penciled out very nicely here. This may be somewhat of a unicorn in a way, in some ways, not entirely, but we need to move heaven and earth. And I know Miguel and I are dedicated, along with a lot of the folks here too, to making sure we get folks off the street and get those units online sooner rather than later. With that, let's cut. 2, 1, 0.